Somewhere in your home right now there is an object from between 1987 and 1999, small enough to hold in one hand, worn at the edges from actual use, and when you hold it something happens in your chest that nothing you own from this decade has ever come close to producing. Something loosens, something returns, and then almost immediately something closes it back down again, because you are in your 40s and you are not supposed to feel this much about an object from 30 years ago. But here is what nobody has ever told you: you are not being sentimental. Your brain is doing something neurologically specific and completely rational, and today someone is finally going to explain what that thing is. If you were born between 1977 and 1983, stay with me. This one answers a question you have been asking quietly for 20 years. There is a documented neurological phenomenon called the reminiscence bump. Researchers across 50 years and dozens of cultures have found the same thing. Human beings remember the period between 15 and 25 years old more vividly, more emotionally, and more frequently than any other period of their life, including yesterday. During those years, everything is happening for the first time, and first experiences encode at maximum depth, activating the memory consolidation center of the brain at a level that no repeated experience ever replicates. For Xennials, those peak formation years were the early 90s through the early 2000s. Every song you heard then was arriving into the highest bandwidth moment your brain would ever have. It encoded permanently. It never left. This is why a song from 1996 can stop time. It is not transporting you to the past. It is activating the deepest encoded layer of your identity, the layer formed when your brain was most plastic, most hungry, most permanently shaped. That layer is not the past. It is the foundation. The song accesses the foundation. That is what you feel when the feeling comes. The word nostalgia is doing enormous damage to Xennials trying to understand their own psychology. Nostalgia is wistful, passive longing for something pleasant that is gone. What Xennials experience is something clinically distinct: psychological safety seeking. The nervous system comparing current conditions to a stored baseline, a reference point for what stability felt like in the body, and returning there when the present becomes chronically uncertain. For Xennials, the late 90s baseline is so powerful for one specific reason: it is the last extended period before the sequence of macro events that defined the first 2 decades of your adult life. Before September 2001, before 2008, before 2020. In 1997 you had not yet lost anything you could not eventually recover. Your nervous system encoded that state. When the present becomes too heavy, it goes home. Home is 1997. Not because 1997 was perfect, because it was the last year before the losses began to compound. The pull toward the 90s is not only safety-seeking, it is also an accurate assessment of a real loss. The late 90s gave Xennials 3 things the present has genuinely not replaced. A world with a finite information ceiling. You could process everything relevant today in 30 minutes, and then the information day ended. Real boredom, the kind where the mind, receiving nothing, begins producing its own content, ideas, creativity, self-knowledge. And social presence that was total. When you were with someone, you were completely with that person. No alternative window, no notification, just the full bandwidth of another human being. These are not imaginary goods. They are documented psychological resources that the structure of modern life has reduced. The pull toward the 90s is partly the nervous system accurately registering that something of real value was lost in the transition. Accurate assessments deserve to be taken seriously, not dismissed as immaturity, not medicated, taken seriously as information about what you actually need. Here is where the video has to be honest with you. Everything said so far is true, and it is incomplete. There is a difference between using the 90s as an anchor and hiding inside it. Healthy, you touch the baseline, feel the groundedness, and return to the present with more capacity than you left it. The album on a hard Thursday evening settles something. Friday you have more to give. The anchor worked, you used it and came back. Unhealthy, the past is where you live rather than where you visit. The people currently in your life feel somehow less vivid than the people in your memories. The work in front of you feels less meaningful than what you imagined doing in 1997. The present is a disappointment that the past keeps making worse by comparison. The diagnostic question is simple. When you return from 1997, do you have more capacity or less? Does the nostalgia energize what is in front of you or drain it? The honest answer tells you which version you are running. 3 specific practices. Not instructions to recreate the 90s. Instructions for extracting what they actually contain as fuel, as standard, as compass, and applying it to the life you are building now. First, once a week recreate the conditions, not the content. 1 hour. No input competing for attention. Low stimulation. Physical presence in a space. The nervous system does not need 1997. It needs what 1997 had. Your nervous conditions this week. Second, identify what version of yourself was compressed by the years since formation: the creative self, the relational self, the one who made things freely without an audience, and restore one specific act of that self per week. Small, consistent, not for anyone, not documented. Just the making or the long conversation or the unproductive hour that produces something internal that nothing efficient ever produces. Third, take the object out of the box, put it somewhere visible. As long as it is hidden, you are agreeing with the shame narrative. The object is evidence that you were someone before the compressions arrived. Evidence belongs in plain sight. The late 90s is not your home. It is your origin. And origins are not places you live. They are places you know. Knowing your origin is what makes navigation possible. Your brain is not stuck, it is anchored. And anchored things can move in any direction precisely because they know where the fixed point is. The nostalgia is not holding you back, it is reminding you what you were built from. The question is, are you building from it? Drop your year in the comments. Not 1997, specifically the year your brain most frequently returns to. Drop it and see how many of you share the same one. You have been carrying this privately for decades. The people who understand exactly are closer than you think. Subscribe if you want to keep going. Next video, the dark side of main character syndrome. What happens when Generation Z is told it is the hero of its own story and nobody warns them what happens when the story has no plot? That one hits differently. Peace.